Is it not enough to know the evil to shun it? If not, we should be sincere enough to admit that we love evil too well to give it up. Hell. That's what every inch of my body had felt like it had been through. Yawning as I stumbled my way back through the bright hallways, I knew that I really needed was a good few hours of sleep to keep moving. As comfy as that bed, my old bed, looked, I wanted to get out of this fucked up facility and back on track to finish my contract. Being some weird project mayor didn't stop the world up top from running, and I still had a job to do that I was hired to do. Along with my body, my mind ached for relief. I kept getting memories flooding back in, some of them simple, such as a single word, or maybe the pungiest of smells or something. Other times it was the voices and faces of ponies long dead, who at one point or another ran into me when I was here. The thing that hurt my head the most was why I couldn't remember any of this before. I couldn't have been here over a century ago. Mom and Dad, they raised me. I wasn't some experiment, born from a theory and a test tube. As my thoughts wandered, I tripped over the still form of one of the lab techs. His thick frame and heavy-taped glasses scattered across the floor noisily. As I watched, my head ebbed in pain as the memory of the stallion came back. He was the pediatrician who had always taken my blood, and he was the most annoying laugh I used to giggle at. And here he was, nothing but tattered and dried remains in the facility he loved working at. I've always known that something went wrong in the old world that left us with the wasteland, but it had never really had any faces that I could feel sorry for. There were no innocents in the wastes, only casualties. Pushing on, I rounded the last corner, back towards the large blast door that separated the computer Philly's room from this hallway. I was happy to see that it was open, and that the entire round room was glowing with different terminals and readouts. Pridius stood talking with the AI at one of its consoles, glancing over at me with the faintest hint of a smile. What? Was he impressed by the fact that I came back? Still in one piece, I see. He shouted across the room, his voice ringing in my ears as my tired head started to spin. At some point I lost my hoofing, and I guess it was time to lay on the floor for a while. When you're a bounty hunter out in the wastes, you're no stranger to staying up for a few days on end. But add the freezing cold, heavy injuries, and the fact that the adrenaline just wore off, you'll find that even the hardiest of earth ponies would collapse. But you know what? After the night I've had, I'll fucking earn the rest. The heavy latches on the enclosed wagon slid open, the large door before me swinging outwards as I got to my hooves. I stopped as my eyes had to adjust to the bright light of outside. The stunning blue of the sky was more beautiful than I'd imagined. I jumped out of the wagon excitedly, quickly wanting to find Mama as she was waiting for me in front of the funny-looking door. The wonder in my first steps outside was lost the moment I saw that she looked sad, which in turn made me sad. "What's wrong, Mama?" The yellow Pegasus used her wingtips to wipe the one eye that peeked out from her pink mane, wicked it away as she pulled her muzzle to a smile. "I'm sorry, Harmony, but we just can't go to the zoo today." As she finished speaking, her smile left her. "But why?" It was a crushing blow. She told me that one day she would take me to the zoo. She'd even shown me pictures of all the foals who walked around happily gazing at the different animals that lived there. Did I do something wrong? Did I disappoint her because I couldn't finish the test she gave? She hit her mane and let out a whimper. "Come on, you little monster." The guard who had ridden with me picked me up in his magic, taking me towards the door behind Mama. The sadness was instantly replaced with fear as Mama just stood there, doing nothing. I filled myself against the magic and managed to break free, running towards Mama and giving her foreleg the strongest hug I could. Well, I never. She's a young filly, not a monster. I'll see to it that you are given a stern talking to when we return. For now, not another word, mister. She huffed out, now running another hoof along my mane. It's okay, sweetheart. We just need to take a little nap before we can go. I knew that it was going to be all right if Mama said it would be. Doesn't that sound nice? I nodded and let go as she wiped the forming tears from my eyes. Where's Daddy? I let go of her leg, now secure in the fact that I wasn't going to be stolen away by any mean guards. He always reads me a story before bedtime. I can't fall asleep without it. She paused as she got up. He'll be here in a little bit, I promise. Now why don't you go on and get ready? She brought back her smile, filling me up with joy again. When Mama smiled, good things always followed. She led me down a bunch of twisting hallways that looked a lot like home did, so full of ponies in white coats speaking in funny words. I wondered if they had a little filly here as well that was just like me. Maybe we could become best friends and write letters to each other. Mama led me into a large room with a shiny metal table in it that reminded me a lot of the table Daddy always had me lay on for checkups. Am I getting a checkup, Mama? I looked up to her, finding that she had started to cry again. Are you all right? I'm fine, dear. She nodded her head, but didn't look at me. Now, you be a good girl. Dr. Lightheart is just going to give you a shot that'll make you go to sleep easier. While she finished, I felt myself lift off the ground, being carried towards the table by the strange stallion's magic. All right there, Harmony. You're just going to feel a little poke. I promise it'll only hurt for a moment. He smiled to me in the same way as doctors who saw me when Uncle Humorous was sick. I let out a small whimper as he pushed the needle into my leg, making it go numb. Mama said it was supposed to make me sleepy. Even so, it was scary. I had to be a strong filly for her. I was picked up and placed onto my back as the serum took effect. The door across the room opened as my aunts filed in. Aunt Dashie was poking fun at Aunt Applejack as they walked in. You saw her in the tests, I'm telling you. She has potential. Applejack rolled her eyes and pointed a hoof towards me. I know, which is why we're putting her into the cold storage. Hey, Twi, are you sure this is even going to work? I wanted to wave to them, but I couldn't move at all anymore. The sound of snapping came from my sides as I could barely see straps being pulled around me. Why would they need to go to sleep with straps? Why couldn't I sleep in a bed? Aunt Twilight spoke up as the seeds of doubt took root in my mind. Yes, Fluttershy's base theory and Pinky's design has successfully been implanted before. She should be perfectly preserved. No, this was wrong. I didn't want to go sleep anymore. I tried to sit up, but I didn't have the strength to do anything other than pull at the straps holding me down. I whined as the tubes that I now noticed were being sticking to my legs stung through the numbness that they were tugging and pulling me with. I was so afraid that I started to cry. I knew Daddy had told me that I was a big pony now, and that big ponies don't cry, but I needed him there. The table that I was jolted on was jolted and lifted up, rotating me forward as I cried out for him, but my muzzle was numb and I couldn't even speak. Even though I couldn't feel them, I knew that tears were streaming down my cheeks as the 6 mares in front of me stopped talking, standing in silence as the table held me in front of them. I so desperately tried to tell them that I wanted to go home now, but nothing came out when I spoke but half a whimper. Mama covered her eyes with her wings and cried out, running from the room in tears. She left me. I hadn't been a good filly and I disappointed her, so Mama left me. I cried harder than I ever had. The soft hum of something came from around me as a glass tube rose up, completely enclosing me. I stuttered as fear took hold when the sound of gurgling came from below me. What sounded like water rushing around me made me tremble. As the water reached my rear legs, I felt through the numbness that was the ice cold. It was so cold that it hurt, and I tried to scream out for Dad. He could take it away and make it stop. Then the water reached my waist. then my chest, where the pain was unbearable as I continued to cry. As it washed up my neck, I knew I couldn't cry anymore, hyperventilating as it rose higher and higher, with the intent to swallow me whole. I sucked in as large of a breath as I could as it rose to my muzzle, holding my breath for only a few seconds before the cold forced the air from me. My world grew dark as my lungs sucked in the blue fluid, the panic I felt receding into depths of my mind as the cold was exchanged for warmth. It felt like Mama had always had when she held me, welcoming and loving. Instead of fighting, my body finally gave up as all the rest of my feelings drifted away. Going to sleep in the water's embrace, I waited for the time when Mama would wake me up to go to the zoo. I could feel the warm tears running down my cheeks as I lay on the floor. The familiar feeling of my saddlebags under my head was joined by the warmth of a blanket that had been laid over me. My thoughts raced through my head as I struggled to hold on to the memories before they slipped back into the recesses of my mind. Why had they done that to me? I had tried my hardest to be the filly that they wanted, but they put me to sleep anyway. Had they forgotten that I was still alive? Or did the end of the world keep them from waking me up? Did I have a life before living with Mom and Dad in the wastes? Or did they wake me up in this chamber in the first place? I couldn't help but whimper and put my hooves to my head. It was too much too quickly. My entire life was built on a foundation of secrets and lies, and now I don't know who or what I am anymore. Am I Storm the Bounty Hunter? Or Harmony the failed project? Ah, Miss Storm, you're awake. The voice of Pretius was a welcome distraction as his approaching hoofsteps helped to refocus my thoughts. You've been out for over 4 hours now. Are you feeling any better? Yeah. The sharp enthusiasm of the AI made my head hurt. When you collapsed, I was sad because I thought you were going to leave me like every other pony who's visited me. But you're still alive, so yay. You're not getting out of your half of the deal that easily. I grumbled, pushing myself from the floor as I rubbed my head at my half-open eyes. I would have rather enjoyed more, but 4 hours are better than nothing. You promised to help us, so unless you want to be a liar... This time it wasn't just a projection of a filly that turned red, but every light in the room changed with her. I told you! I don't lie! She screamed out, staring me down as her voice shook the rest of my weariness from me. Right. Probably still a bad idea to anger the unstable filly death machine. The room shifted to a blue tone, as the projection looked at me sadly. I had hoped that knowing that this was your home would make you see that we're like sisters, but I guess you are just as disappointed with me as every pony else here was. No, not disappointed. Great. Now I put her where I had been as a filly, and I hated knowing that. Just exhausted, frustrated, and wanted to get the hell out of this place so I can go home. A day in bed, a good meal, maybe a long bath. And that would be heaven to me right now. And where would that be? Pretius craned his neck with a smirk across his muzzle, once again trying to nudge any juicy tidbit of my personal life from me. Though my answer wouldn't be one to reveal much, I still didn't want to encourage him to ask more about me. When you're a bounty hunter, I suppose home is the closest inn. I spoke as I hoofed my satchel up in my muzzle, biting down on the old worn straps of leather and slinging it around my neck. Home, though a fantastic-sounding notion, was at the back of my mind now, pushed there by the fact that I was still a long trek back to where I needed to deliver Pretius. One we should soon be heading to as soon as possible. Ooh, let me come with you! The bright pink projection bounced up and down on her hooves excitedly. You know, I would, but you're kind of stuck here. Lying through my teeth about her sticking around wasn't normally my thing, but the fact that she's a tad bit psychotic really makes me not want to be around her. My thoughts were interrupted when she fuzzed off her pedestal and the entire room's lighting dimmed out for a second. Oh, goddesses. Why did I have to open my muzzle again? Of course she's going to make us stay now. My Pipbuck let out an audible beep before text scrolled across my augmented vision, with the words, "Download successful." The AI filly popped into my vision, with a burst of digitally confetti, the sound of kazoos and party horns playing as she smiled to me. "When I was stepping in earlier, I didn't realize it was quite so comfy in here." Her voice came through the speaker as she bounced around in my vision, hurting my eyes as I tried to follow her. "But," I waved my Pipbuck in front of her, "how the hell did you get in here? If you could transfer, why didn't you use your monster thingy?" I looked to Pretius, who was snickering to himself. Enjoying this, I'm sure. "Pretius, help me out here." The filly shifted my vision to red. "Hey, he's not a monster." She huffed for a moment before assuming an indifferent look. "He's a siren minotaur, and he's got a name." She turned around and gazed in the direction of the metal beast's wall impression. "Iron Will, quit being so lazy and get your flank over here." With a metal rumble, the minotaur stiffened in the recesses, taking a heavy step out before turning towards us. The dull blue in his eyes had given before was a more brilliant than it had been before, probably due to the fact that it had more power now. It glanced down at my Pipbuck, before sending twin jets of steam from its muzzle with a hiss, throwing a hand up in a salute. "He says he'll come with us if you allow it." She smiled to me and turned my vision orange. "Oh, come on, sis. We can keep him around, can't we?" "Don't refer to me as sis. My name is Storm," I plainly remarked, going over the pros and cons of having a machine like this around. Con, it's loud and hard to miss, so sneaking around wasn't going to be out of the question. Pro, it's loud and hard to miss, meaning it might keep some of the fairly smart ponies out there from messing with us. Con, it runs on some sort of energy, so I'm not sure how it would be powered when we get far from here. Pro, it's got a ton of power behind it. Literally. Could be useful if I ever need to make my own exit, or fight something that I couldn't before. He obviously requires energy. How would he be serviced outside the facility? Pretius must have been mirroring my own thoughts himself. I'll give that guy one thing, and that is that he doesn't miss much. Too bad I'm hoofing him over, as I'd be dead without his help earlier. Though if the Minotaur joins up, I might not need anybody else's help anyway. My display changed to gray as the AI yawned. "Oh, he runs on spark batteries. Simple to find at any supermarket, and you only have to change them once a week." She scrunched up her face and put a hoof to her chin. "You do still have supermarkets outside, don't you?" "Yes." Pretius answered quicker than I could, which was good because I wasn't sure what to tell her. Not having any ruin exploring before, it had been easy to forget that she's been trapped in here for over a century, with no way of knowing what the outside world was really like. Though things might not be quite like you remember ponies talking about them being. That was most definitely an understatement. "Well, what do you say, Storm?" "Fuck it, why not?" With as bad as an idea this night's been, I really need all the help I can get. Just so you know, you can follow us along as you do what I say. I'm the one in charge, so you don't go around killing ponies and causing trouble without my say. Okie dokie Loki! She bounced on her hooves with a bright smile. The compass on my digital display spun on its own accord, and displayed a triangle marker just above the marker to the southeast. "This is the fastest way out of here, if you would like to continue towards the previous engagement you spoke of earlier. I hope the ponies you are meeting don't mind me coming along." Normally I'd say no, but the fact that the contract was posted by the Steel Rangers made me a bit uneasy in the first place. More so now that I was wearing something on my hoof that was more valuable to them than anything I was carrying. The good thing was that her robotic friend with us, they probably wouldn't be stupid enough to try anything rash. "By the way, what are we supposed to call you?" Pretius spoke up as he gathered his own saddlebags. "This whole time we've been speaking, I don't think I've heard you say it once." No pony's ever asked me since the lockdown. I know I have one, but it's corrupted in my files." She shifted my display to blue and curled herself up. I don't know my name." Why don't you just choose one? Prettius, the voice of wisdom again. Because the name's special. Father gave me that name, because I'm unique. I can't go overriding it. She sniffled and wiped the digital tears from her eyes. Your father? You mean Dr. Panacea? I wanted to call him Dad as well, but I couldn't bring myself to say those words. That was another life, one which I can never go back to. Storm Rider's the only name that I go by now, and my mom and dad are the ones I want to refer to by those names. For a moment, it looked like she was frozen in my display, sitting unmoving as I waited for her to answer. Instead, she quickly let out a gasp while snapping the display from blue to pink so fast that it was almost blinding. I can think of a nickname! I wouldn't override my name, and you can just come up with that. She sat down and pulled out her bubble pipe, turning the screen purple. Now, what should it be? Both Prettius and I sat in silence for a moment, waiting as she did nothing but sit there again. Not as easy as you thought, is it? I laughed and shrugged. You know, if it's too hard, we could just think one up for you. No. She swapped the color to yellow for a moment. I'll think it up, just... She gasped and changed the screen to pink again. You can both call me Pie! As in the food? I didn't so much get it, but it was simple and easy to remember. As in the letters P-A-I? Prettius spoke up with an interested tone. I think she just figured that she was a pink AI, so she combined them. He shrugged and got to his hooves. Now that that's settled, maybe we should get moving. He held his hoof out, pointing it in the direction we had to go. Would you still like me in front? Did he find a map while I was resting? Or was it one hell of a lucky guess? It was unimportant, as he at least still knew what I wanted. Yup, you know what they say, age before beauty. I gave him a quick smirk as he trotted by, his magic levitating me my rifle as he passed. I quickly slung it around me and let out a sigh, as I just couldn't pin down why he was cooperating when he knew I was going to turn him in. From what the files say on Project Harmony, I think you may be just a bit tad older than me. He laughed out as I got in line behind him, the steel machine turning around as we passed it. Its heavy stomps were punctuated by the distant whines of hydraulics as we walked, entering the halls that no longer seemed anywhere as frightening as they once had. Hey, watch it, Buster. Didn't any pony ever tell you not to talk to a mare about her age? Even though the halls weren't as bad, that still didn't mean that I still didn't want to distract myself. This proved not to be so much of a problem as we made it to the rubble-blocked entrance in only a matter of minutes of trotting. It took so long to get to before, I was sure it was further away. Maybe it was another trick of the shadow pony I'd seen, or maybe I was much more afraid than I realized I'd been at the time. You might want to stand back. Pi tapped at this display with her hoof, successfully getting my attention. My legs froze up as a long hiss sounded from behind me, the sound of metal grinding again, as the tiled floor was all I needed to hear before I instinctively flung myself to the side. The heavy-duty pistons that were designed for use on things like forklifts gave the robot an impressive speed as it took off towards the large pile of debris in the way. For a moment, I was afraid that it, having its head and horns forward, was going to mean that it would just crunch backwards into itself from the impact. But it struck the blockage with a heavy whoomp, and immediately the area where we were in was nothing but a thick dust and shower of concrete and dirt. I rubbed my eyes as the dirt cleared, and the sight of the mechanical beast on the other side of the hole it punched through filled me with a sense of awe. Woohoo! Pi called out, twirling and dancing across my vision as digital confetti rained down. Way to go! Iron Will is the #1 smasher around! The Minotaur turned and bowed to us, before striking a pose that I had seen old-world bodybuilders do to show off their muscles. I pushed myself up and dusted myself off, keeping an eye on Prettius as he did the same. Now that we were getting closer to the exit, he could bolt at any minute. The second we were outside, if he made a move, I really didn't want to go searching through the blizzard to find him after last night. Without another word, onward we trot, winding our way to the hallway with the generator access hatch. We passed through several more uninteresting hallways after that until we reached a thick blast door that had a digital keypad on it. "What's the code to open it?" Prettiest beat me to the punch. Pi shifted in color to gray and propped her head on the digital table with her hooves. "The code is..." She gave a long pause, stretching this out for some reason. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Prettiest hit the buttons as she spoke, perking his ears as she finished. He shut his eyes tightly and put his hooves on his head. "So, the combination is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the stupidest combination I've heard in all my life. That's the kind of thing an idiot would use on a safe." I blinked as I realized that the same combination that Dad had on the safe at our home. I was about to speak up, but the loud squelch of grinding metal made me cringe as the heavy door rose slowly into the ceiling. Before us sat a long, stark white hallway that stretched on for what had to be 1,000 feet or so, ending in a small gray circle. It was just about the brightest place I'd ever seen, or probably would ever see, and it made me angry that they didn't use this many lights in any of the other hallways. I could have used that shit when everything else was creepy as hell. Would it have helped? Probably not, but I would have at least felt better. I prodded at Pretius to keep moving, and only got a grumble before he took off at a trot. I followed him, wondering just how much further it was to the exit. As we got closer, the circle turned into an oval-shaped hatch, and the marker on my display disappeared. Without any warning, there was a mechanical hiss, making me panic and throw myself against the wall in an attempt to avoid the Minotaur's charge. Only after I hit my head against the wall did I make it out as the hiss coming from in front of me, not behind. As the hatch swung open, I could see the dark and foreboding cloud cover of the wasteland, sitting low in the sky as it always had. With a sigh, I got up and noticed that Pretius had frozen in his hoofsteps. A look of fear was in his eye as he trembled slightly. I caught a glimpse of a dark figure outside the hatch as I got my hooves under me, quickly getting to my hind legs and swinging my rifle around towards them. The pony was cloaked in some sort of fancy robe that concealed their identity from me completely. As I realized that I hadn't reloaded since the fight, I waited for them to make their move before reacting further. Interesting. So you're the reason it disappeared. Very interesting. It was the voice of an older stallion. This realization took my mind off of him for only a moment, which he used to run and turn from our view. I didn't know what he was talking about, but the fact that he knew this exit was here was reason enough for me to stop him. What he just said told me that he knew what had happened down here, and if so, maybe he was responsible for it, and I could pay him back for the shit that I went through. I bolted past Pretius and stepped through the hatch, finding myself sinking, my fetlock deep into mud. For some reason, all the snow in this area had melted, and had made the ground a soggy pit. The cloaked figure hadn't left any hoofprints, and as I found, was nowhere to be seen as I walked around the cleverly disguised exit. A rock? That's what they hid the exit in? Pretius sounded upset for some reason, but the answer to the question of why we walked out into the middle of an old farm field. The field was strewn with boulders and rocks of various sizes, and a farmhouse, barn, and silo could be seen on the other end. You know what? I could care less. I slung my rifle around my neck again, tilting my head up as the cold breeze ran through my mane. I'm just glad we're out. A glimmer caught my eye off on the horizon. I didn't know whether or not it was nostalgia from my old life, that I had never really taken time to properly look at it, or the fact that the past day had been nothing but darkness and fear, but the sunrise managed to force a small smile to my face. Chapter end. The nearer the dawn, the darker the night. Quest finished, none. Quest started, none. Levels earned, none. Perks earned, none.